Greetings from the Philippines to the world. It's September 29, 5:06 p.m. here in Manila. And we are on Facebook Live on Eagle News, and also watch this video on Eaglenews.PH. I am Cesar Vallejos, and we are open for business. Join me discover the latest news and information in business around the world. Stay ahead of the curve from vision to action. Our topic today is something that no business, even the small ones, cannot escape. And even consumers who are not directly paying it are feeling the brunt of it. It is the Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion Law, or the TRAIN law. It exempts minimum wage earners from paying personal income tax, broadened the tax base, and increased excise taxes. The implementation of TRAIN is expected to generate 130 billion in government revenues, which will be used for the Duterte administration's Build Infrastructure Development Program. After TRAIN 1, there is TRAIN 2, or now called the Tax Reform for Attracting Better and High-Quality Opportunities, or Trabajo. TRAIN 2 will reduce the corporate income tax rate from 30% to 25%. Expand the tax base by 0.75% of the country's gross domestic product, simplify tax rules for corporations, repeal special laws on investment tax incentives, and amend the Tax Incentives Management and Transparency Act. As we see it, there is no stopping the train. This afternoon, we are privileged to have in our midst an expert on taxation, a tax advocate which earned him the title Philippine Tax Whiz, who will inform us where the TRAIN 1 and TRAIN 2 now. What is so far the impact of these tax reforms and how businesses are affected and will be affected? For business, and we are here with the Philippine Tax Whiz, Abrea, the founding president and the chief strategy officer of the Asian Consulting Group. Thank you, Mon, for coming.
Thank you for the invite, and good afternoon to all our viewers and followers.
Okay, we heard a lot of things already about TRAIN 1, and now there's TRAIN 2, and then we also heard one of your suggestions, which is to abolish the BIR. But maybe before we go into the other details, where exactly is TRAIN 1 now? And based on your assessment, what is the impact to small businesses, businesses, and the general consumers?
Actually, let us not forget that the Duterte administration adopted a comprehensive tax reform program. Meaning this does not end with lowering personal income tax or with imposing any new taxes for that matter. So regarding your question on TRAIN 1, which is part of the comprehensive tax reform program, which is TRAIN 1, 1B, 2, 2 plus, 3, 4, so and the list goes on. So the TRAIN 1 is now facing a lot of challenges, primarily because of the inflation. And the BSP has already made a pronouncement that the inflation will further increase from 6.4. I think they are projecting, they are saying that it will be around 6.8%. So it's even higher than, contrary to what the economists, the analysts were saying, that it will slow down or go down. Well,
which is exactly my question, Mon. Is inflation caused by train, or was it just a contributing factor?
It is a contributing factor. That's why we are now calling for a serious review of the provision to suspend the excise on fuel. Because it is already in train law. It's not something new. This is not like opposition asking the government to stop the train. No, there is a provision that clearly states that if the price of the barrel will increase to $80 per barrel, the price of oil in the global market, then there is a need to review and suspend the excise on fuel.
So we are looking, that's very realistic in the coming days.
Yeah. In fact, even the proposal of Senator Bam, who's obviously part of the opposition, that we also consider inflation. Given the experience, you know, the thing with tax reform, a lot of experts will say their piece, but no one is really expert as to the ultimate impact of any new tax or any change in the tax system. So the world is looking at us right now. So rather than explaining and being defensive, let's work together. Because ultimately, we will all benefit if this tax reform will be implemented properly. So if you ask me where is the Train 1 stand right now, it's facing a lot of criticism primarily because of lapses in implementation, not on the law per se. I believe in the purpose, in the provisions of train law. In fact, the suspension is part of the provision of train law.
Okay.
So this is not something that ultimately planned to compromise the poor, like what other people are saying, that it is anti-poor. I don't think so. It is not anti-poor. It's just that the implementation, let's just say, wasn't that well.
Okay, so I understand it now. So implementation is the problem, but the law itself is not. But we also know that there are specific benefits to from Train 1.
Yes.
Are these benefits really effective, and has the consumers or businesses felt the impact of these benefits?
Let me clarify that.
Okay.
Number one, Train 1 or train law lowered our personal income tax.
Okay.
If we move back, or let's step back, 2017, that's still under the old tax system.
Correct.
A $500,000 annual salary or income will be taxed at 32% already.
Correct.
Same as Manny Pacquiao, Manny Villar, and the billionaires in this country.
Yes.
Even if you're a regular employee.
Okay.
Under the train law, the first 250%, the first 250,000 is subject to 0% or exempted.
Okay.
I think there should be no debate on that. It's clearly a relief for ordinary Filipinos. So, if you now compare it with the price of goods, that's another thing. You do not complicate it. The government gave us a relief by lowering personal income tax, period.
Okay.
Now, as to the offsetting measures also adopted by the government through train law, that is something we can discuss now. Because it's also our position from the very start that we do not subscribe to the fact that if we lower or remove one tax, we replace it with another tax.
Correct.
That's not also our position. Our position from the start is if we lowered our income tax, we have to make sure we invest in modernizing our administration, BIR, customs, in general.
Okay.
Otherwise, no matter how many taxes you introduce, if they cannot collect it or if they do not have the technology to collect it, then it will be useless.
So definitely, it's not an additional tax.
To us, to me, that is how I look at it. We have more than enough taxes already.
Okay, let's go back to what you said. Okay, it's there's no debate that the regular employees benefited, the ordinary Filipinos. Okay, they get their...
I'm not saying that you have to be indebted to the government, but let's be objective. Train 1 lowered our personal income tax. If the opposition calls for the suspension or removal of Train 1, that means returning our tax savings to the government. We do not want that. So I think the argument there really is how effective these offsetting measures are. Because in Train 2, there's another offsetting measure. So that's where we keep on discussing improved collection, modernized BIR, stop corruption, deal with that.
Okay.
Let us not set it aside.
Okay.
Because the position of DOF is tax policy reform cannot be hampered or cannot be compromised by issue of administration. I beg to disagree. Tax policy reform should be complemented, supported by tax admin reform. Otherwise, any intelligent, brilliant policy reform will be put to waste if the one who will implement it can hardly understand and collect more taxes from it.
Okay. Before I ask you about the offsetting measures,
Yes.
because you were telling me about offsetting measures, there are some regular employees that, of course, they get a bigger paycheck once they receive their salaries every 15th or 25th or 30th. But when they go out of their offices and they buy commodities, so it's more expensive now because of inflation. Don't you think how do you correlate between the higher paycheck and the rising inflation rate?
Well, that's exactly what I'm mentioning earlier. Number one, we do not deny the fact that train law contributed to the increase to higher inflation.
Okay.
The government should not deny that.
Yes.
I think they have admitted it. But aside from the direct impact, there are, I think, indirect impact which were never considered. And what is this? Everything is being delivered or transported from one place to another. Therefore, the gas consumption, the consumption of oil, gas, is tremendous. Whether it's a product, a service, everything will require, it's part of its cost of production or distribution.
That's
Therefore, as regarding your position, that how do you now correlate the higher paycheck but higher price of goods? Yes, there was really an increase in commodity price, and that is something that the government has to address now, especially with the inflation, which is obviously up in a way. So, but again, I do not think that it's entirely the train law's fault.
Okay.
I'm not denying that it has a contribution, but it's unfair to blame everything to train law. I think there's an issue on that rice shortage. We should really shut down NFA if they cannot really function well.
Right.
I mean, let's be practical.
And the rising prices of crude oil.
Correct. And, people are not talking about this. But smuggling is still an issue. Even if you keep increasing the excise of cigarette and all these goods, if smuggling will not be addressed, then it will continue to proliferate. Where will you buy? Cheaper cigarette or a cigarette with excise? Definitely, people will find its way to get on the black market. And where will the black market get its supply? From smuggled goods. Therefore, people are not talking about it. The Duterte administration may not admit it, but smuggling is still an issue. Tax evasion is still an issue. If we do not get to address this, tax reform is just a blunder. It's not true. A genuine tax reform should address all these loopholes in our tax system.
And then you mentioned about the offsetting measures. Are they doing it? Are the offsetting measures being provided by the government?
Well, the offsetting measures provided in the train law is exactly the one that caused the increase in prices. So what I'm saying is, even if the benefits are targeted, like the social mitigating measures, the unconditional cash transfer, the fuel voucher, the discounts, at the end of the day, if you cannot control prices, you're just giving them few pesos, but they still need more. So it's important that the economic managers will have to deal with it on a long-term basis, not just to keep us quiet because we are criticizing it.
But with the economic managers, are they really responsive as well on the mitigating measures? Because there's a lot. And are they responsive and they are providing it right on time where the problem is occurring?
I think the OF has done its part, but as to other implementing agencies, I think there were really lapses. Like, for instance, DSWD were not able to implement or release the unconditional cash transfer. The OTR, for that matter, released as well the fuel vouchers a little bit late. So, for poor people, every 100 peso, every peso counts. Very important. So, one day delay is like a matter of life and death. And I think that's something that was ignored or not prioritized by the government when they implemented the train law. January 1, oil prices started picking up. But the unconditional cash transfer started being released sometime March, April, July. Then until now, it's not yet completed. So my point here is we have to be extra careful with offsetting measures. When I say offsetting measures, new taxes to offset the lowering or to recover revenue losses that the government is estimating because they are giving because they're lowering personal income tax. And for Train 2, they are lowering corporate income tax.
Okay, before we go into the Train 2, okay, which we'll just pause for a break, but my question, Mon, is that if you rate the implementation of Train 1, 10 the highest and 1 is the lowest, what's its mark?
Well, to me, the social mitigating measure and the response to the impact to inflation is very important. I will rate it 6. Because I really look up to it. In fact, I'm being blamed even by my mom, my friends, even by our employees because of the increase in prices. That's exactly what hurts people. They cannot understand GDP. They will not understand the credit rating. What they will understand is where their paycheck will go. Will it sufficient or not?
Open for Business will return. Stay tuned. Stick with us. We're back and we're open for business. With me is the founding president and chief strategy officer of the Asian Consulting Group. Mon, some consumers were traumatized by Train or its negative view. Is this the reason why it was renamed to Trabajo, which means tax reform for attracting better and higher quality of opportunities?
I think so, because there was a threat that our foreign investors, our locators, will pull out their investments and leave the country once the rationalization of fiscal incentives gets implemented.
Okay.
But to me, that rationalization, I think is more than 10 years old already. I mean, the proposal to rationalize the fiscal incentives. Again, lowering the corporate income tax should really have nothing to do with the rationalization. I understand the position of the government. Don't get me wrong. I know that they're trying to recover what they will lose from lowering the income tax.
Correct.
And it's hard to rely on the administration, who's like more than 100 years old and whose employees are like really old, to change and to really cope with all these technological advancements. But it's unfair for taxpayers, especially for us regular taxpayers who never had a choice. Like for instance, for Train 2, the Trabajo, lowering corporate income tax will benefit 99% of the registered corporations in the Philippines.
Okay, which are basically the small and medium enterprises.
Which are paying 30% corporate income tax because they don't have any incentives.
Okay.
Therefore, who are these industries affected by the rationalization? They're less than 1%. I understand they're huge. But you cannot ignore the fact that the 99% for the longest time are paying 30% without any complaint. Probably they're not declaring all their income like most of us are guilty of. But you do not discount the fact that they are supposed to be the one benefiting from Train 2. Now, the rationalization, DOF is trying to present it in a different way. But it's an offsetting measure. You try to rationalize the incentives so that you collect more from these locators, from these foreign investments who have been getting all these incentives forever. Sabi nga there's no deadline. Everyone is getting a tax incentive or holiday for until end of time.
Why, man? How much in terms of tax incentive are they getting? Like if we talk about these incentives, these are the ones who are based in PESA,
yes.
How would they call it? Economic zones.
Yes, they presented like 300 billion losses because of the income tax incentives that they have extended. But it's also unfair to the legit ones. Why? Because they have provided employment. They have really invested in the country. Then what's where am I coming from? Number one, I do not want the lowering of corporate income tax to be compromised by the fact that it's hard to rationalize the fiscal incentives. I mean, do not delay it because it's long overdue. It's like the personal income tax. Number two, the rationalization should, I agree with the DOF, it should be performance-based, it should be time-bound. But every industry that will be affected should really work now with the legislator so that all their inputs, all their complaints, all their numbers will be considered. Because, I don't know what Congress did. They were able to pass it like they were passing whatever law. But anyway, my concern there is, I do not want the lowering of corporate income tax to be derailed or delayed just because the rationalization will face a lot of criticism or issues. Because I don't think anybody will complain about the lowering of corporate income tax.
Yes.
In fact, what we are proposing is from 30%, we immediately lower it to 25% because right now we have the highest corporate income tax in the ASEAN region.
That's right. And I learned Singapore has
17%. And let's face it, we have friends who are here, but their businesses are registered in Hong Kong, in Singapore, and they are paying taxes there. In short, we are not competitive.
So how do we fare with our
we need to
Asian
immediately
neighbors?
lower it to 25.
But the plan now is basically every 2%
every 2 years.
Every 2 years until 2024.
24. But that's compared to what DOF proposed, which is for every collection from the rationalization, there's a percentage, then they will try to lower it by 1%. Of course, I do not agree with that. I do not support that. I support the lowering, but to me, let's make it simple, especially for businessmen. You don't want to face so much uncertainties when it comes to government regulation and taxes. So you want to know how much taxes should I pay? For foreign investors, they need to compute already how much taxes should we pay if we invest in the Philippines. So from 30, my suggestion, next year make it 25. Immediately, but impose the optional standard deduction.
Which is?
Which is, do not fabricate and do not claim any more expenses. Optional standard deduction means 40% is automatic deduction. No more receipts, no more supporting documents, no BIR audit. What's my point? A lot of these corporations are not declaring correct taxes.
It's a workaround.
Correct. If you impose the OSD, but 25%, win-win. The effective rate effectivity of collection, efficiency of collection will increase without government doing anything. Because 25% will be a lot attractive. But for you to avail of that, like the first 2 years, you should be using OSD. Then after 2 years or 3 years, that's the time that you claim itemized deduction, meaning you recover your whatever losses from the imposition of a lower rate. But the 25% should stick. So no going up. It goes down.
Are you saying, Mon, that there are a lot of creative taxpayers who do this optional?
That's exactly my point. We have, and I'm sorry that I belong to that profession. We have a lot of lawyers, CPAs, if not all, majority of them, and some of them are even legislators, who have not paid their taxes and who have contributed in allowing their clients not to pay the right taxes. And look at the tax evasion cases. BIR is not winning any case. Why? Because the taxpayers get a good lawyer. They're getting good lawyers, and BIR cannot even defend their assessment. While the micro taxpayers, they're afraid of BIR because they don't have the good lawyers. They cannot afford good lawyers.
Which I think I heard what you mentioned in one of your articles or interviews. There's a big difference between policy making and administration.
Yes.
So we really have to work heavily on the administration.
We need to make sure we simplify the administration to the point that we would not think otherwise. We just pay taxes. We make it available like through mobile phone, through online, that you don't need to hassle yourself to get a bookkeeper or a fixer or a messenger to file taxes or returns. Make it too easy that you will feel guilty if you still don't do it. Or if you violate the law, you go to jail. Have you heard anybody who went to jail, who was put to jail because of not paying taxes?
Nada.
They even go to Senate. So my point is, we have to make it simple, like what the administration is saying. Simpler, fairer, and more efficient. I hope it's true that we're really after making it really simple, fair, and efficient. Because at the end of the day, policy should be complemented by an efficient administration with an honest taxpayers. And honest taxpayers will not just come after 2 decades. I mean, you have to create an environment that will encourage honesty, that will incentivize paying the right taxes rather than paying under the table, which is the norm right now.
Mon, the other question is that since with the implementation of Train 2, some of the investors who are in the economic zones, because they enjoy these tax holidays and other incentives, with Train 2, that will now be abolished.
Actually, that's the misconception.
So will that contribute to them leaving the country and doing business somewhere else?
Okay, the position of the DOF, which I support, is that they are not exactly removing the incentives.
Okay.
Number one, they just want to make sure that all the incentives given are justified and that it has a sunset provision. Meaning, if you're getting tax holiday right now, after 5 years, you have to start paying a percentage. Not necessarily the 30%. Not necessarily the VAT, the 30%, the local tax.
Yes.
It's still a simpler and a lower version. But no more tax-free forever. That I think is the position of the DOF, which I support. Number two, that they really want to measure the impact to the economy. like how many employment really are you contributing vis-a-vis the incentives that you are getting.
Okay.
Because in the end, I think we will all agree on this. If the cost of doing business it will go down, if the cost of paying taxes and taxes will go down, nobody will even ask for incentives. You only ask incentives because you don't want to deal with bureaucracy, with red tapes, and with all this unnecessary costs. But if we can really lower it with the Ease of Doing Business Act, with this comprehensive tax reform, if everything will take place and it will really be implemented properly, no one will even ask for incentives. I don't care. I don't need incentive. I just want a fair tax system. I just want a fair and quick dealing with government. I don't want to keep queuing and getting a friend and asking who's the mayor, who's the commissioner, who's the whoever. No, we should not be doing that. One click, then we should be able to process whatever we need with the government.
Correct. And is it also true, Mon, that this will somehow lessen or abolish the inequity between the ones who get incentives? Because right now they I think the data shows that there's they pay about 6% and then 13% compared to, as you said, the 1995 or 99%. Is that will inequity really be abolished or removed?
Yes, I think that's also the direction of Train 2, that it will set the playing field more fair, equal to whether you are a startup, a local, or a foreign player in the country. Because in the end, as long as doing business will make it more profitable for you here in the Philippines, then whether you are local or foreign, you will just choose Philippines. It doesn't matter whether you get incentive or not, because you know that the bureaucracy is not that of a problem, or doing business is not that costly. I think it will still attract foreign investors. But again, that rationalization should really be taken up carefully with the concerned locators and foreign investors, meaning with their church chambers, etc. Let us not disregard their sentiments, because whether it is emotionally loaded or not, they put money in our country. Let us not just act as if we don't care. No, we care because they trusted, they risked their money here. Yes, they risked their money here. So I guess it's important to hear them out. And for the senators who are now deliberating Train 2, they really have to get all the inputs from different sectors. And let me just acknowledge the Senate Ways and Means Committee. They got our inputs already. We sent them a detailed commentary, and it's really geared towards modernizing tax administration. I am really more of that. I think before we finish the Train Law 1, 2, 3, 4, it's important that we keep on increasing the provisions on tax administration. And that includes exempting them from salary standardization, and ultimately the House Bill 695 of Speaker Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, which is the overhauling of BIR. I am not calling for BIR to be abolished. There's a bill. I am just
but you support it. But you support
I support every option that will improve our tax system.
Okay. That's good enough. That's fair enough. And is it true that with this trabajo, it will really provide incentives or job opportunities? How will it provide more job opportunities?
I was listening to the last Senate hearing, and it's kind of confusing though, because Dole is saying that there will be job losses. So I think the economic managers should really discuss this among themselves. I am not here to criticize their job. I'm saying I'm also confused as a tax advocate, because that's not, my job is not to count how many people will lose their jobs. But if they're saying it's a trabajo bill, meaning really providing employment, then they have to counter the position now of Dole, which they were saying that there will be job losses, and that's a serious concern. Because I think the renaming is a political positioning. They call it trabajo instead of Train 2 because of the criticism that locators leaving the country will mean loss of employment or job losses.
Exactly. Yeah. So, Mon, the show Open for Business really supports entrepreneurs, small businesses.
Yes.
So if I am an owner of a new business, as a tax advocate, as someone who knows the ins and outs of taxation, what is your advice, or how will small businesses, small and medium enterprises prepare for this tax reforms?
Okay, to me, it's do your homework. Meaning, rather than just getting a consultant or a lawyer or an accountant right away, you try to read up, you try to really understand what's happening, because ultimately, whether you are growing your business or you're about to start your business, all these numbers, this tax increase, decrease, new, old taxes will hit you sooner or later. So do your homework, really assess how you feel about it. Are you okay with 30, with 25%? Or is your option really in the Philippines, or you consider also branching out in Hong Kong or in the ASEAN region? You really have to know. That's why we are positioning ourselves as tax hub for SMEs in the Asia Pacific, because it's not fair or it's not wise to be unmindful of these things because you are just passionate about something. Passion is not enough. It may not be taxable, but the moment you start making money, that will be taxable. So you have to really be wise and be ahead by planning this out. So read articles on the tax reform updates, and of course they can follow the DOF for all their press releases. But it's also important to hear the different perspectives, because if it's coming from DOF, sometimes they just focus on the benefits that they want to provide. I mean, I'm not saying they're lying. This is something that they hope to provide to our country or to our countrymen. So it's just that it's important that you also have your take. Like if you are starting a food business, how will you be affected by Train 1, by Train 2, will there be amnesty? Will there be new taxes on oil or alcohol or cigarette? I mean, you cannot be unmindful of these things. So it's important that we really try to understand as early as possible.
Earlier, before we did the interview, you said, when people realize or hear the word tax, the tendency is that there's fear because there's numbers, and then the government will go after them. You are implementing, and you have a lot of suggestions on how to provide information about taxation, and that I think is key, because we need as they say, data now is the new currency. So what do you think must the government do, and even the private sector? How can the private sector help each other to ensure that the recommendations that you have suggested, even with the legislators, will be implemented?
To me, for DOF, VAR, Bureau of Customs, I think it's important that they provide more taxpayer assistance, especially in terms of making us understand the processes. Other than the fact that they're trying to streamline it, for one, I know that the BIR, headed by Commissioner Dulay, they're really working hard since day one to streamline, to cut the red tape, etc. But it's important that the frontliners in every BIR office can really explain, answer phone questions. It's important that taxpayers will feel that there's someone on the other side who's willing to listen to me.
Correct.
Someone is telling me I need to pay 10,000. Is it true? Or that they will not fear BIR, because the traumatic experience is when you go to BIR, they talk about penalties all the time. So you won't dare go to BIR. Or if you get an assessment, instead of you being educated or assisted, what should you do? You will be traumatized by the fact that they are asking you to pay amount of money that you have never earned in your entire life. And to me, it requires so much accountability for BIR examiners. So remember, I'm a former BIR examiner, and I will not talk about what they do. I can only talk about what I experienced when I was a BIR examiner. We have to do our job more conscientiously. Corruption in BIR is worse than corruption in any government agency, because it's affecting not just the lives of the taxpayers, but it's also corrupting the lives of the examiners, making them believe that they have that power and right to mess up with every taxpayer who do not pay the right taxes.
And who are working hard, to do business.
For every taxpayer, delinquent taxpayer that they encounter, they are morally responsible to help that taxpayer do it properly. Not to further dig or make their problem worse and ask for bribes or accept bribes. So, I think...
what do you think is the problem? Is it culture? Is it character? What is the problem?
It's really embedded in the system that I always say this. Before I entered BIR, I just hate BIR examiners. I just know they're corrupt. But when I joined BIR, I realized they also have their sentiments. They have a very low pay, low morale. The budget in BIR is so low. I think it's second to the lowest. So, and you are asking them to collect trillions of pesos. But it doesn't work that way. So if you want them to collect trillions, then they should have billions of budget, so to make sure that they have technology, the best minds and skills.
Correct. But is that happening in other countries? Do you have a study where this BIR, the collectors, examiners?
Yes, that's why I am promoting the House Bill 695, because the proposal of Speaker Macapagal Arroyo to overhaul our tax system is actually patterning it after IRAS of Singapore, where there is no one commissioner, there is a board. So there are cabinet secretaries representing the government, but there are also 3 private sector representatives, meaning making sure that the collection is fair both for the government, that they collect enough revenues, but also fair for the businesses, that they won't go bankrupt or that their souls will not be burned in hell.
Correct.
Just to save from taxes. Then at the same time, when it comes to release of clearance or decisions on rulings, there's a fair discussion.
Where is it now? Where is the bill now?
No, it's still sitting in Congress because their priority is one to dismiss the impeachment case of the Supreme Court Justice, and the next one is the Train 2, which they passed already. So I mean, it's a matter. I don't think it's a priority right now. That's why I keep on talking about it. Again, I am not saying I want to abolish BIR. Period. What I'm saying is I support every option to help our tax system work. And if it entails overhauling BIR, then we have to explore that. Because it means really saving the reform. Reform will not function if it's all superficial. You cannot just change the numbers, change the title, and you expect everything to work.
That's right.
As long as there is a taxpayer who feels deprived or who knows that there is a corrupt examiner, or as long as an examiner knows there is a dishonest taxpayer, this won't work. We all have to challenge ourselves to be part of the reform, to do our part, whether examiner or taxpayer. And that's where we come in. As advocates, we're not just here to criticize BIR. We're here to help. We're helping taxpayers pay the right taxes through our publications, our articles, our road shows, through our social enterprise, Tax Hub, that really opens its doors to a lot of startups, SMEs. We're here to help people pay the right taxes.
As we said, Mon, there's no stopping train.
Yes.
So, as we said as we mentioned in our topic, where is the train bringing the Philippines? We know that we hoped for a very, very consistent 7% growth all throughout, and that will provide us the real progress. So where is it bringing?
I believe what we're experiencing right now are birth pains of this reform. I mean, I don't think there's really an easy way to reform or change anything.
Okay.
But at the same time, I hope towards the end, this reform will really allow our government to uplift the lives of our people. And it means not compromising them because of inflation, not compromising them because BIR is still pathetic and corrupt, not compromising them because congressmen still don't understand our tax code. If you give them a quiz, they may not be able to pass 1 to 10. I mean, that's crazy. We are entrusting our tax code, our tax system to people who don't care or who don't even pay their taxes. I mean, I think that's set the difference. I'm not just an advocate. I'm not even running for any position. But day and night, I'm hoping and praying that the government will understand that it's hard to give your hard-earned money to a government whom you have to trust, even if it's so hard to trust them because you don't see where your taxes are going. And this is not answered by explanation. We want to see that every Filipino will feel help, relief. I mean, this is not just about getting a relief goods from government. This is about getting opportunities, equal opportunities, or whether you're rich or poor, whether I am a graduate of a Metro Manila University or a province, I will have equal opportunity. If I want to start a business, whether I have a capital or not, I will have equal opportunity. Whether I am known or not, if I work in a government agency, I will be treated as a respectable and honorable Filipino. I don't need representations, or I don't need anyone to know so that they will help me. So I think that's the efficient tax system. It's simple, fair, but at the same time, it will really contribute in uplifting the lives of our people, not just the GDP, not just the credit ratings, not just the trust ratings of the president, but the lives of every Filipino, including yours and mine.
Thank you very much, Mon. That was a very, very insightful interview, and we hope to have Mon back here in the show in the future, in the very near future, as he will provide us more information about Train 2, and the other tax reforms of the country. Open for Business will be back. Our term of the week and our quote of the day when open for business returns. Stick with us.